Hello everyone and welcome to the TradCast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. And today is episode number 24, and on today's show, I'll be giving you a few updates here from Northern New York, and then I'll be discussing some of the gear I like to use while hunting. Let's jump right in to today's show. Okay, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the TradCast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. And this show is for the week of June 12th, 2015. And tonight on the podcast, I'm going to be giving you guys a couple of updates on some things that are going on here in Northern New York with me, and then I'm going to be discussing a little bit about some of the gear that I've used in past seasons and have had good results with, and I'm going to be discussing some of the gear I plan on using this year as this year is going to be my first year ever hunting with traditional equipment. So let's jump right into tonight's show. Okay guys, and now the first update I want to give you guys is another food plot update, and this week's update on food plotting is I'm going to discuss a situation that I'm going through currently on my property and what I'm doing there and in my thought process on this food plot. And that's, I've got a food plot that I haven't done anything with yet this year. It's a very small little food plot. I think it's probably, I'd say maybe a 1/15 of an acre. So just a very small food plot. It's tucked back into the woods. It's tucked way back into the woods. And it's a food plot that gets a lot of deer activity. And the issue I'm having is last July, I put a planting of clover in there. And it grew very, very well. Had an awesome food plot in there last year, no complaints whatsoever. But what pretty much happens in that food plot every year is that area is pretty much a low spot for the general land area. So the food plot is bordered by a lot of acres of woods and even some agricultural fields on the other side of it. And what happens is every spring, when our, several feet of snowpack melts, because that's a low spot in the general area, all of that watershed from the surrounding land just keeps that food plot area completely drowned with water. And I would say, depending on the winter and how much snow we get, that food plot has standing water in it pretty much up until at least mid to sometimes even late May, which was the case this year. We had a hard winter again this past year. And what happened was, when all that watershed came and when that snow melted, all that watershed and melting snow just kept that food plot completely drowned with water up until the last week of May. And what happens when that happens is that month after, when you go 2-3 months of standing water, in a clover food plot, those clovers, that water just pretty much rots out the clovers, and it's going to pretty much kill that clover plot. And what also happens is all of that watershed and running watershed coming in there day after day after day, is it's bringing in a lot of weed seed from the surrounding land that water's coming from, and it's washing in a lot of weed seed into that food plot. And so now this year, I checked up on this food plot this past weekend, and what happened is, I got a lot of weed seeds, a lot of weed grass, a lot of weeds coming up into that food plot. Yes, I do have some clover coming in there, and it looks good, but I also have a lot of weeds coming in, and it's just not going to make for, it It would be a good food plot for sure. I mean, it would certainly be an attractive food plot for deer, but it's not going to be a real good clover plot because there's a lot of weeds in there, a lot of grasses, and, you know, if I was to keep it in clover, it would probably be okay this year, but next year, when the same thing happens, I'm going to have a lot more weed seed and a lot less clover, and in a couple of years, I'm going to have pretty much a clover plot that's pretty much going to be overrun by weeds and grasses. So what I'm going to do there is I've pretty much made the decision that it's still going to be a great food plot location, and I'm going to have it as a food plot, but it's pretty much going to have to be a fall planting food plot. So what I'm going to do there this year is I'm going to wait for a couple of more weeks to go by. I'm going to go in there, weed trim that food plot right down as low as I can get it, and then I'm going to wait a couple of weeks. Let those grasses and weeds start to regrow, even the clovers, let them regrow. I'm going to go in there at that point after a couple of weeks, and I'm going to spray that food plot with some glyphosate, kill it off, and then I'll pretty much just let it die and rot up until probably the first weekend, maybe second weekend in June, somewhere in that time frame. I'm going to go in there, drop down some fertilizer, and drop down a fall food plot blend right on top. And then in the subsequent rains, we'll beat that seed down into the ground, and I'll have hopefully a really good fall food plot there. And this way here, next spring, I can do the same thing every year. I can just keep mowing down the weeds in the summertime, spray them, let them die off for a good month or so, let all that vegetation just get real dead, where it's not going to be inhibiting my seeds from making good seed to soil contact, and then I'll go in there late summer, early fall, put down a fall blend, and then every year I'll have a successful fall food plot. So that's something that I'm going to be doing on this food plot. And if you have a similar situation, if you have an area that just gets a lot of water in the spring, or for whatever reason just doesn't seem to be an ideal springtime food plot location or summertime food plot location, you can make those be very successful fall food plot locations. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that. Now, another update I had for you guys is I wanted to let you know that I'm going to be doing a new weekly video on my YouTube channel, and pretty much what that's going to be is every week I'm on my properties checking, a bunch of trail cameras on my property, and I thought, it'd be a good idea if every week I put together a little 3 to 5 minute long highlight video showing you what animals have, showed up on my properties each week. So I'm going to start doing these videos. I haven't done this week's yet, but hopefully here in a couple of days I can get that one done. And I'm hoping that every subsequent week from here on out, I can just make up a little quick 3 to 5 minute video, kind of highlighting the animals that show up on my properties. So if I have a big bear come through, or hopefully, as I get more images of some young bucks and hopefully a few mature bucks, I'll be sharing those in the videos. So if anybody out there is interested in seeing what animals are showing up on my properties each week, I'll be doing that new weekly video, and you guys can watch that on my YouTube channel. So I'll be putting that on there every week. It's not going to be, I won't be putting those on the YouTube channel like the same day every week, just because of my schedule. I never know really what's going to go on from week to week, but I'm hoping to get one on the channel each week. 1 week it might be on the channel on a Monday, 1 week it might be on there on a Friday, but I am hoping to every week get a short 3 to 5 minute video on there, kind of highlighting what animals are showing up on my properties. And with that, just to give you guys an update on this past week, I had a pretty good sized bear show up on my 45 acre property, which is in more of a big wood setting. I had a bear come through there last week, and gosh, I'd say he's got to be probably close to 400 pounds, maybe even a little bit more. He's definitely a good sized bear. He'll be one that I'll be looking for this season if I get an opportunity. I'm certainly looking looking forward to getting my first bear, and would certainly like to get a shot at that one. So, and I had a smaller bear show up on my other property, my 90-acre property, a couple of weeks ago. I had a bear show up on that property on one of my small clover plots. That bear was probably a couple 100 pounds, maybe 250 pounds, maybe. Visually estimating him, visually estimating the bear from a trail camera photo. But yeah, I do have a couple of bears showing up. I've still got several small bucks that are on the properties. A lot of this year's spike horns going to be around. I've got probably 4 or 5 different looks like spike horns going to be on the properties this year. Got a couple of bucks who are starting to branch out on their antlers, so they're probably going to be maybe bigger crotch horns or maybe some 6-pointers. But so I do have a couple small bucks running around, still getting a lot of doe pictures. And I've actually, back on June 1st, just got my first picture of the year of a fawn. So hopefully in the next several weeks I'll be able to get show you guys some cool photos of a lot of fawns running around in the food plots and stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update on that. I'll be doing a trail camera video each week so you guys can see what's showing up on my properties. As a reminder, if you guys want to check out our YouTube channel, you can find it by typing Vantage Point Outdoors into the search bar on YouTube. Most of our videos should pop up. I think the channel is up to 228 videos now, somewhere in there. I've been adding several videos to the channel each week, and I plan on continuing to do the same thing throughout the summer and fall. And if you guys wanted to follow us on social media, you can do that on Facebook at Vantage Point Outdoors, and you can also find us on Twitter at VPO Pros. So anybody who wants to follow along with us on a day-to-day basis on social media, that's how you can do that. And just, I guess, one last little quick reminder, quick update. I did a video this past week when I was in checking my trail cameras, and I'm coming up to the 1-year mark of having my Moultrie M880, 2014 Moultrie M880 trail camera out into the woods. I put that camera up there last July, and the camera, as of last weekend, was still showing over 50% battery life, and that's coming up on the 1-year mark of being in the field on just 8 AA Rayovac batteries. And that's the best battery life I have ever gotten personally from a trail camera. And I've used a lot of different brands of trail cameras. But I tell you what, that 2014 Moultrie M880 just gets incredibly good battery life. The pictures are really, really good. It's been very durable. I've got absolutely no complaints with that camera. So anybody looking to get a trail camera this year for your properties, or if you're going to get a couple of trail cameras, I tell you what, in that $150 range, I personally think you'd be very, very hard-pressed to beat the Moultrie line of cameras. I'm very happy with my Moultries and have been now for several years. So, and I just did that video, and that's on our YouTube channel now. So if anybody wants to tune into that video or any of our other videos that I've got in the channel, you can certainly do that over on our YouTube channel. So I just wanted to give you guys that update. Okay, and the last update I had for you guys is I'm hoping by the next episode to have a guest interview on. I've been just incredibly busy with work the last couple of weeks. This past week has been no exception. Another just super, super busy day, super work week. In fact, I didn't even know as if I was going to have enough time to actually record a podcast this week. That's how busy I've been, but things did work out, so I did have an opportunity here tonight to record this podcast. But I have been in communication with an awesome guest who I think would make a really, really good podcast show. I'm trying to make that happen. I've been in contact with him now in the last week or so, and we're just trying to get our schedules to match up to where we can, find an hour to record this show. And I think it's one that you guys will enjoy, and I'm looking forward to getting that on here as soon as I can. but I'm just trying to get my schedule to match with his. So hopefully by next week we can do that. If not, certainly within 2 weeks, I think I can get that podcast on here for you guys. So if you've been tuning into the podcast regularly, I think this is one you're going to want to tune in for. So keep an eye out for that. Just so you know, this will be a great guest where we'll be discussing traditional bow hunting, and he films a lot of his traditional bow hunts. He's got some absolutely awesome traditional bow hunting videos up on YouTube and does a great job. So I wanted to bring him on the show and pick his brain about not only his thoughts on traditional bow hunting and how he does it, but I also want to pick his brain a little bit about his filming, because he does a great job at filming his hunts. And I found him a few weeks ago on YouTube, and I reached out to him to do a podcast. He has agreed, and now it's just a matter of getting our schedules to coincide with one another. So be on the lookout for that podcast here in the next couple of weeks. And I think that's pretty much it for updates, guys. Now I want to jump into the heart of this week's show, and I just wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about gear. Some of the gear that I've used over the past several years that I've had good results with. And I also wanted to touch on some of the gear that I plan on using for this upcoming season and my thought process behind why I want to use that gear. Okay, and how I'm going to start this segment out is I'm going to just basically tell you guys what my traditional bow hunting setup is going to be for this year. Now, for anybody who's been listening to the podcast, this is my first year ever shooting traditional. Will be my first year ever hunting with traditional equipment. But with that being said, I certainly am not trying to, sound like an expert here. I'm just letting you guys know what I'm going to be shooting and what I'm hoping to have success with. And I have a Jerboden Whip longbow, great longbow made by Denny Mears. I really enjoy the bow. Have been shooting it a lot and am doing really well with it. And I also have a Dwyer Endeavor longbow, which is just a little bit shorter of a longbow. That was built by Dwyer Longbows out in Wisconsin. They did an amazing job building that bow. I love my Endeavor. I love my whip, and I've been shooting both bows a ton here, all winter through this spring. And I'm going to be shooting a ton this summer, just trying to be the best shot I can become. So I'll probably bounce back and forth between the two bows, because I'm pretty good with both bows. Or I'm getting, a lot better with both bows, and I'm comfortable shooting both bows. So I'm sure I'll be shooting both of those bows at some point here, at some point during the season. I'll be shooting each bow. But yeah, I'm a longbow shooter. I do have a used Bear Grizzly recurve, but I just personally like my longbows better. They're just more comfortable for me. I'm more comfortable shooting them. I think they're more forgiving, and I just personally prefer shooting the longbow. So that's what I'm going to be doing this year. As far as my arrow setup, I've been shooting the gold tip traditional 500s the past several weeks, and I'm really liking the way those are flying out of my bows. So I'm going to be shooting those this year. Mine are cut to 27.5 inches and shooting great out of both bows. And I've also been experimenting with the Luminox the last couple of weeks. I'm getting really good arrow flight from the Luminox. Plus, it's going to add a visual element to my videos, because I am going to be videoing my hunts this year, as I do most every year. So I've been experimenting with the Luminox and having really good results. They work very well out of my bows, and I think they're going to add a very cool visual element to my videos. So I'll be using those this year. I'm going to be shooting the Simmons Landshark broadheads, 175 grain heads. I've been practicing a lot with those two, making sure that they fly the way I want them to, and that I get comfortable shooting those. So I'm bouncing back and forth between my field tips and my broadheads. But as we get closer to season, especially in the final couple of months before season, I'm probably going to revert to just strictly shooting the broadheads, so that I get just really super comfortable shooting broadheads before season opens. So that's what I'm going to be shooting for my broadheads. And for my quiver, I've actually made my own kind of quiver modification. I've got a YouTube video that I did on that a couple of months ago. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes for you guys if you want to see that. But basically all I did is I took a standard arrow quiver, and I just took a couple of zip ties, and I zip tied it so it lays virtually parallel on a leather belt. And I simply, wrap the leather belt around my waist. This way here, my arrows are at my side, and they're in line, they're streamlined with my body, parallel to my body, so that when I'm going through thick brush and through heavy briars and through the woods, my arrow fletchings aren't catching on twigs and branches and tree limbs and everything else. Because I have had an issue with that in the past when I put my arrows in a backpack and have the fletchings up above my head, or even at head height. When you're ducking through the woods and bending over to, negotiate tree limbs and brush. I just had a lot of issues in the past with my arrow fletchings getting hung up and just making noise and going through a lot of hassle. So I've made that arrow modification, that quiver modification, and I think it's going to work out very, very well. So that's how I'm going to be carrying my arrows. I'm not going to be using a bow quiver. I don't have anything against bow quivers. It's just not, I just don't like using them. I didn't use them when I shot compounds, and I don't plan on using one shooting traditional. So I don't like using an arrow quiver. I want to keep my arrow quiver on my side with this belt modification. Okay guys, now I wanted to just talk with you a little bit about the camo I plan on using this year. Now I recently picked up a bunch of the ASAT camo. And for anybody who's not familiar with ASAT, it's not a very popular brand. You don't see it a lot on TV. I mean, there are a few TV shows that you see it on, but it's not a real popular brand. You don't hear it much. In fact, I just learned about it myself last year, late last summer, is when I first heard about this camo pattern. And they've been around since like 1987, I think, is when ASAT was created. But it's an awesome pattern. ASAT stands for, I think it's all season, all terrain, or any season, any terrain. But it's an awesome camo pattern. I got a couple pairs of the BDUs, of the ASAT BDUs. I do have their 3D mesh suit, which is like an oversuit that you'd wear over some underlayers, and it has the 3D leafy material to it. Just awesome camo pattern. I've got a couple. I got one of the ASAT vests, and I got some long sleeve tees. I got a couple of beanie hats. So I've got a lot of ASAT camo. So I'm going to be using that a lot this year. I just think it's an awesome looking pattern, especially when you're in, those, the brown leaves of fall and the brown brush of fall. In my opinion, this pattern just blends in incredibly well, and I think it's going to be just a dynamite pattern. Looking forward to wearing that this year. So anybody who's not familiar, go onto the ASAT website or just do a Google search for ASAT Camo. Check it out. And they have a pretty compelling YouTube video on their channel too. I'll leave a link for that too, guys, in the show notes. If you want to check out more on this ASAT Camo pattern, check out the show notes. I'm going to be leaving a link in there for this ASAT Camo video. I think it's like a 7 or 8 minute long video on YouTube, and it really is a very compelling video, and it really kind of opens up your eyes to some things that you don't conventionally hear of from camo patterns and from competing camo patterns. And I just think this ASAT pattern looks great, seems to blend in very, very well. I'm going to be using it a lot this year. I'm not saying I'm going to be exclusively using it, but I'm going to be using it a lot. And with that said, like I mentioned earlier, last year was my first year wearing the BDU style pant a lot. And I'm just talking, cotton BDUs. And I tell you what, I love wearing BDUs when I'm hunting because I feel more comfortable. They're not as restrictive as a lot of other pants can be, and they have pockets all over them, so you can put all kinds of things in pockets on your legs, and I like wearing BDUs. And what I found for myself, anyways, is even when the weather starts to get cold, even under 20 degrees, in the teens, which we get our fair share of here in northern New York, as long as I wear a couple of pairs of long johns, or maybe one pair of long johns, and maybe a medium to heavy pair of wool pants underneath my BDUs, I'm just as comfortable and just as warm in the BDUs as I am in pretty much any other hunting pants I have, unless I wear one of the real heavy insulated pairs of pants, which I don't typically like wearing a lot because I just feel very, very restricted, and I just don't like wearing those. But I just felt very comfortable last year wearing BDU pants, and I plan on wearing BDUs again, not exclusively, but a good majority of this season. So anybody who hasn't thought of that, that's something I tried and had good results with. And you know what? I find if you wear a couple of thermal layers underneath them, you can even wear them during the cold portions of the season. So I'll be wearing a lot of BDUs. Another thing I do have a couple of is I do have a couple of ghillie suits, which now that I'm hunting a lot off the ground with my traditional bows, so I do want to use my ghillie suits a lot more. I've got two of them. I've got one that's more of a green, forest green color for early season hunting, and I also have another one that's got a lot more brown in it for mid to late season hunting. So, but I certainly realize that there can be a big advantage to concealment with a ghillie suit, and I want to start wearing those a lot more this year. I think it can certainly help you stay concealed at ground level. So I'll be planning on doing that, and I'll be letting you guys know my thoughts on that and my experiences on that during this season, as I wear those more this season out there hunting. But I wanted to let you guys know that I will be wearing some ghillie suits this year as well. Now, another thing I wanted to touch on is that I pretty much, not that I don't ever wear hunting boots anymore, but honestly, last year I wore just hiking shoes probably about 90% of the days hunting last year. Even during the snow, honestly, as long as it wasn't too super deep, I pretty much just wore hiking shoes. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because, I did hunt a lot off the ground, and I was being a lot more mobile, and I'm going to continue to do that this year. And when you're hunting on the ground, and you're moving around, and you're still hunting, I personally want to be in a lightweight shoe that, you can be very sneaky in, that you can walk in a variety of different leaves or any kind of terrain, and be a lot quieter and just be a lot more comfortable on long days, moving through the woods. And I had great results last year and was never more comfortable last year moving through the woods than I was in my hiking shoes. And I actually, the ones I like are the Merrell. I got the Merrell hiking shoes. Had really good results with those last year. And what I found was, even if the temperature is like, teens or, low 20s, your feet don't really get that cold, unless you sit still for a couple of hours. As long as you're still hunting and moving around, which is how I like to hunt now, my feet don't get cold in hiking shoes. And you know what? If they get wet, I've got a couple other pairs in the truck. I now keep a couple of extra pairs in the truck and several pairs of socks. So if I get my feet wet in the morning, you know what? I'll still hunt back to the truck, put a new pair of socks on, a new pair of hiking shoes, and I can go hunt for another 3, 4, 5 hours. And you know what? I mean, even if your feet do get wet, you can always swap them out, and you can dry these hiking shoes about 3 times faster than you can dry hunting boots. So if you're on an out-of-state trip, you can keep your hiking shoes dry very easily. Just throw them on the dryer for a couple hours, if that, and they're dry. And so I've had good results with hiking shoes, and I just think from a still hunting, mobile, from a mobile, ground hunting perspective, I just think they have a lot of advantages. The biggest thing is the biggest thing for me is the noise and the stealthiness that you can get from a hiking shoe over a big, clunky rubber boot or a big heavy boot. But another thing is just the comfort level. I mean, walking in the woods for a couple of hours in big, bulky rubber heavy boot, knee-high boots, and then do that same walk for 2 hours in, a very light, easy to carry pair of hiking, easy to wear pair of hiking shoes, and you're just a lot more comfortable. So I've had good results with hiking shoes. I've got the Merrells. I've had good results with those. They seem to do really good at keeping your feet relatively dry, unless you're hunting some really wet conditions or super wet grass. Then yeah, your feet's going to get wet. But I've thought about this, and I just know for myself, if I have to make the decision between being more stealthy, more quiet, more comfortable, and maybe having to deal with wet feet a time or two more, or having dry feet but having to deal with the uncomfortable factor and the much more noisier and much more bulkier and heavier traditional hunting boot, if having those hiking shoes is going to give me more shot opportunities and help me get closer to that next deer from a ground hunting perspective, then you know what, I'm perfectly comfortable dealing with wet feet a time or two and have no issues with having to swap out for a new pair of dry shoes. So that's just my 2 cents on what I'm doing now as far as my hunting boots. I've actually kind of gone away from hunting boots unless I'm really hunting in just super wet terrain, or if I'm going to be hunting in extreme cold or extreme deep snow. Then yeah, I'm probably going to wear hunting boots. But for early season hunting, or for even rut hunting when it's temperatures are in the 30s or even high 20s, when I'm ground hunting, still hunting, I'm going to be wearing hiking shoes. And you know what? I just think they've got a couple of very key advantages that I'm excited to take advantage of. And I just wanted to give you guys, kind of my thoughts on that. Now, I also wanted to give you guys an update, or I also wanted to let you guys know about a couple of the GPS units that I've had good results with. And one's a GPS unit, and the other one's actually a GPS app for your smartphone. And that's the Backtrack. Now I've got the Bushnell Backtrack GPS unit, which I think I paid like $70 for. It's just a little small handheld GPS, and what it basically is, at least mine, is you can mark up to 5 different points on it. And essentially what you do with it is, when you arrive at your hunting location, before you walk into the woods, you mark your truck, or you mark the access trail where you walk in, or whatever you want to come back to. You mark that location, and then from there, you can simply walk any direction, any distance you want to go. And when you want to get back to the spot where you whether it be your truck or the trailhead or whatever, the spot that you marked, you just pull up the icon, and the unit just automatically draws you an arrow right back to that location, and it gives you the exact distance away that you are. So for me, it's a very foolproof, very easy to use GPS unit. It's been very reliable. I've come to completely trust mine, honestly, and it's very comfortable. It's very comforting when you're walking out at dark and you're a mile back in the woods, and you're following that arrow, and you see that distance go from 1.1 mile to 1 mile to 600 yards to 400 yards to 300 yards. It's very comforting when you're following that arrow and you're seeing that distance, count backwards back to your truck. It's very comforting when you see that arrow that distance get smaller and smaller and smaller as you're walking. And so I really like using my Backtrack GPS. I like it because it's very small. It's extremely portable. It's extremely easy to use. I mean, a 3-year-old could use this GPS. Because I'm not the kind of guy, I don't have, a lot of different locations marked. I mean, especially now that I hunt a lot more mobilely, all I really need to do, myself, is I need to get back to my truck after I'm hunting. And in my opinion, this GPS Backtrack unit is a great way to do that. And also the smartphone app. There's actually a Backtrack smartphone app for your iPhone. It may be on Android as well, but I know it's on iPhone. And it's a great app. Works pretty much the same way as the Backtrack GPS unit, except with the app, you can plug in, dozens and dozens and dozens of different locations. So that's a great way to go. Although I would always recommend, bringing a compass with you as a fail-safe, which I do. I always have a compass, and stuffed in one of my pockets. And so it's a great, fail-proof way to get out. But 99 times out of 100, between my Backtrack GPS and the Backtrack app, I've had no issues, getting out of the woods. And even in places where I've never even stepped foot in before, I just walk in cold and use the GPS Backtrack to get back out. So that GPS Backtrack unit and the app are both great ways to navigate on your hunts. So I wanted to give you guys a quick update on that. Now I also wanted to go over with you guys the cameras that I'm going to be using this year to film my own hunts. And the way I'm going to be doing that this year is I am going to be using the Sony Action Cam on my head strap mount, and that's how I'm going to be capturing my point of view footage while I'm hunting. And what I like, and I did a podcast before and a few videos, but what I like about this Sony Action Cam over the GoPro is I think it does have increased image quality, has much better audio quality, and I think the ergonomics of the Sony are going to be better on the head strap for self-filming. And I actually also have the wristwatch LCD remote for the Sony, which is going to be pretty much a foolproof way to guarantee that you are recording, when that hunt is unfolding. So I want to go with the Sony Action Cam. I think it has some advantages over the GoPro, and I think it's going to work great for capturing my hunts and my kill shots on film. If you guys want to see a couple of sample videos that I've done with these cameras and on the head strap mount, you can go to the YouTube channel. There's a link for it here in the show notes. Go over to the YouTube channel, click back through some of those videos. I've been practicing with that combination here the last few weeks, and really liking the results that I'm getting. Now I will also keep probably a GoPro, just a little GoPro out of the case, just where it's very small and very portable, and I'll just have that tucked in my hand muff. This way here, if I have to or if I want to, I can just pull that out real quick, record a quick little interview from the woods, or if I want to record something real quickly, I can do that. So I'm going to have a GoPro tucked into my fanny pack to help capture video footage of some other things going on in the woods. And I'm also going to have my Panasonic HDC HS900 camcorder, little palm quarter, tucked into my fanny pack as well. And the way I use that is I use my Panasonic camcorder to capture video footage of distant animals. So this way here, when I'm hunting, if I see a deer that's 70 yards through the woods, or 100 yards off in the woods, or way off in a field, I can pull out my camcorder, my Panasonic camcorder, and I can zoom in and I can get really good video footage of these animals. And then as that animal is, if it comes in and is going to give me a shot opportunity, or if I think I'm going to get a shot opportunity, I can just quickly turn off that camcorder, stuff that back into my hand muff, turn on my Sony Action Cam on my head strap, and now I can capture the actual shot in the in-close footage on my head camera. So that's how I want to film my hunts this year, and the cameras that I want to do with that. Now, I also wanted to give you guys a quick rundown on the trail cameras that I have on my properties and my thoughts on them. Okay, now to start out, I have the 2014 Bushnell Trophy Cam HD trail camera, which is about a $250 unit, at least when I bought it. It has good battery life. A couple of the downsides are image quality, and especially nighttime image quality. Daytime pictures are decent, but in my opinion are subpar to a lot of other trail cameras on the market, even cheaper trail cameras on the market. So for $250, I personally do not think that the Bushnell Trophy Cam is a good deal. I think you can spend your money better elsewhere and get better results. I also have the Browning Special Ops camera out, which I think is now a 2-year-old unit, I want to say. And my Browning Special Ops works very, very well. Gets very good daytime images, gets very good nighttime IR images, has awesome battery life. Camera has not let me down yet in a couple of years, so can say nothing but good things about the Browning Special Ops. I've also got several of the Moultrie cameras out on my property. I got the Moultrie M990i. I've got the Moultrie M880. I got a couple of those actually. And those cameras take very, very good pictures. Very good nighttime pictures. Battery life is very, very good. In fact, I just did a video here this past week for the YouTube channel where I was showing you guys some results I've gotten out of my 2014 M880. And that camera is actually coming up on the 1-year mark of having that camera in the woods on the same batteries. And that camera is still showing over 50% battery power. So the Moultrie line of cameras, in my opinion, have been absolutely stellar. Very durable, good pictures, awesome battery life. In my opinion, you simply cannot go wrong with a Moultrie. And I've also got a few of the Browning Strike Force cameras out, which are a little bit cheaper unit on the Browning side of things. But again, those cameras have very good picture quality, daytime and nighttime quality, very good battery life, very easy to set up, and they've been very, very durable. I've got 3 of those on my properties, and all 3 of them are working very, very well. Another camera I've got on my property is the Wild Game Innovations Lights Out 7, which has been, I think I'm on my 3rd year now with that camera. Battery life has been amazing. Approaching that 1-year calendar battery life mark. Daytime pictures are very, very good. The nighttime images on that camera are a little bit subpar. Occasionally you'll get a really, really good nighttime image, but for the most part, the nighttime images do suffer. But the camera does have great battery life, and the daytime pictures are very, very good out of that Wild Game Innovations Lights Out 7. Now, I also do have a few of the Primos Truth Cams on my properties, and those cameras work very well. They get, decent image quality. Nighttime images are a little bit suffering, not too bad, but the cameras get, good battery life, not excellent battery life, but they get very good battery life. Can certainly go 2 to 3 months on batteries, no problem, and have been very durable cameras. So I really have nothing but good things to say about the Primos Truth Cam series. And I also have 2 of the Cuddyback cameras on my property. I've got both the Long Range IR and the Black Flash. That's the 2014 Cuddyback models, and those cameras, I would have to say, probably take the best daytime pictures I've seen out of a trail camera personally. They take 20 megapixel, beautiful daytime images. Nighttime images on the Black Flash IR are certainly subpar. They're not very good at all. I mean, yes, you can tell whether it's a buck or a doe or a fawn or whatever coming through, but the picture quality certainly is not very good. Although nighttime images on the Long Range IR Cuddyback are very, very good, and battery life on both cameras are very good. So as far as my personal recommendation as far as what camera you want to go with on the Cuddyback end, I would say if being covert and if being covert is your number one priority, go with the black flash, because you will be able to tell what animals are in there at nighttime. But if your number one objective is good pictures, then I would go with the IR long range, because the nighttime images are certainly better. Daytime images are equal, and battery life has been pretty much equal in my experiences between the two cameras. Okay, guys, and I wanted to end this week's show talking a little bit about tree stands. Now, even though I am going to be, for the most part, at least for the majority, going away from tree stands, I do want to do a majority of my hunting now from the ground. That's just what I want to do now. I just think I'm going to be happier hunting that way, and I'm hoping to be more successful hunting that way. But with that being said, I am still going to be hunting from tree stands on occasion, especially on my own properties where I've got my food plots established and I've got a couple of key travel corridors established where I know I can get in there and have predictable deer movement on my properties that I've got patterned and got scouted. I am going to be still tree stand hunting in those scenarios. And I know I said this before on a few other podcasts, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate, without any question whatsoever, in my opinion, from the tree stands that I've ever used, the best tree stand that money can buy is simply a lone wolf. They're quiet, they're easy to set up, they're very quiet to transport, they're quiet setting up. Most importantly, they're very, very quiet when you're hunting from them, no matter what the weather is doing, no matter what the temperature is doing. Lone wolf tree stands flat out perform very well. And like you always hear, you get what you pay for in this world. And when it comes to tree stands, in my opinion, lone wolf is simply the best money can buy, at least from the tree stands that I have used. So I wanted to give you guys just a quick little tidbit on my thoughts on tree stands. If I was going to be buying a tree stand tomorrow, it would be a lone wolf tree stand. Okay, guys, well, there you have it. Just wanted to do a short little podcast tonight on some of my opinions on gear and some of the gear that I'm going to be bringing with me this year on my hunts, and kind of my thought process behind why I choose that. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I've only got one last reminder for everybody. If you're enjoying this podcast, if you like what we're doing here, I would really appreciate it if you could jump on over to iTunes, leave us a quick review. It's going to be a great way for me to not only get this podcast out to more people, but it's also going to be a great way for me to continue to recruit new guest interviews for the podcast. So if you got a moment, please leave us a review on iTunes. And as always, I want to thank everybody who took the time to tune into this week's show. I'm going to see you next week right here on an all-new episode of the TradCast.